interactive radio program in Las Vegas today. It's time for Pushing the Limits with Brian Shapiro. Brian will talk sports, politics, entertainment, and anything that matters to you. Feel free to call Brian at 702-221-7283.
You want answers? I want the truth!
Now, Pushing the Limits, here's Brian Shapiro.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome. It is Pushing the Limits on a Monday. Man, it's good to be back. I got to tell you, it's great to be back. I needed to take a few days off and kind of rest up and heal up, and wasn't feeling too great. But, man, it's good to be back on the air. It's good to be back with you because this is like therapy for me. Anybody who knows me knows this is therapy for Brian Shapiro. So today's a very special day, of course. It's the 22-year anniversary of 9/11. And I'm going to do my best today to try to remember the victims, the heroes, the firefighters, the police officers, all the innocent victims that lost their lives today. We're going to have some very special guests in this hour joining us from New York City, doing some charity events, some big guests lined up. I'll leave those as a surprise, but we're going to have multiple guests this hour talking about all the charity work that people are doing, celebrities and just good-hearted people in trying to get I guess you could call it a memorial for the victims. I can't believe that they haven't done that in New York yet. I can't believe it. So we will be talking to multiple people about that, having a good time. You know, I remember that day 22 years ago, I was a dumb 21-year-old kid. Some would argue that I'm today still a dumb 43-year-old kid, and they might be right on that. But I was driving to school, and every morning when I went, drove to school, school, I listened to Howard Stern. And this is the live Howard Stern clip from the Howard Stern show. This is the clip that I was listening to on my way to college at Central Connecticut State. And I had no idea. I'm on my way to a communications class, right? And as I did, it was a ritual every day. I would listen to Howard Stern in my car. And I always found his show very enjoyable, but I had no idea, just like everybody else, what was going on. This is exactly what I heard on the Howard Stern show 22 years ago today. Here it is. So that's what I heard. And when I was driving to school, I said to myself, I thought it was like a 2-person propeller plane or something, and I thought it was an accident. So I go to class, and then as I'm getting out of my communications class, I see everybody huddled around a TV. And as they're huddled around a TV, I see images of the World Trade Center buildings collapsing. And we were all in shock. I was in shock. I didn't know what to make of it because we were in class for 2 hours. I walk out of class, a lot had transpired in those 2 hours. And as soon as I heard that, another plane had hit the World Trade Center and then they collapsed, obviously anybody with a brain understood that this was intentional, that this was a terrorist attack. And then I went home and then I put on CNN and I saw everything unfolding, and my family was in shock. I have a family member that lives downtown in Manhattan. And then we learned what happened. And yes, there are going to be conspiracy theorists out there that I get very frustrated with that say it was an inside job. that say it was Americans that put this all together. We know that that's not true. We know that the main people responsible for this was Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, the Muhammad Attas of the world. We know that. And by the way, several of those terrorists spent some time in Las Vegas a week before 9/11. We know that for a fact. We know that this was the mastermind, Osama bin Laden. We took care of him. I mean, they just ID'd through DNA evidence 2 people that died on 9/11 just last week. There are still people that haven't been identified. And my heart goes out to their families and friends on that horrible day that can't be forgotten. We have to remember. I can't believe it's been 22 years. And yes, we take our freedoms for granted in this country. There's no doubt about that. And there's no question that under George W. Bush, they certainly received warnings. Condoleezza Rice, they received memos and warnings that Al-Qaeda was planning an attack. But I don't blame George W. Bush for what happened as much as I disliked him as a president. I don't blame Condoleezza Rice. I don't blame our FBI. The people that I blame are the people that went into those planes with box cutters and decided to plow those 2 planes into the World Trade Center buildings. And the plane, of course, that went down in Pennsylvania, the plane that went into the Pentagon, the heroes on that plane in Pennsylvania. God knows how many more people would have died if not for those heroes on that plane that went down in Pennsylvania. Number one people I blame are the people that were on those planes that wanted to take their own life, and while doing so, taking as many other innocent lives as they could. I will say this. I wish all those innocent people that lost their lives were still here today, but they did not die in vain. Our airports are more secure, and I believe we are more secure as a country because of what those horrible people did on that day. Wish those people were still with us. I can't imagine being up on one of those World Trade Center buildings and having to make a choice. And that choice was, am I going to burn alive, die from the smoke inhalation and cough and burn alive, because I can't imagine how hot it must have been up there, or jump off the World Trade Center building to my death? I can't imagine having to make that choice. And I remember the images, and I don't think we'll ever forget the images of a man and a woman holding hands while jumping off the World Trade Center building. The image of a chef tumbling, jumping off the building in his uniform. People up on those buildings waving what appeared to be towels and sheets or whatever they could find up there to try to get help in the last moments of their lives. And the phone calls, the 911 calls of people up there saying they needed help, that they couldn't breathe. The calls to family members, people even on the plane who were calling their loved ones saying, I just want you to know that I love you. This doesn't go well. Terrorists have taken over my plane. The calls from the World Trade Center buildings, even to the last seconds of their life, while on the phone with 911 operators, the video and the reporters and members of the media that were just blocks away from the World Trade Center buildings as they collapsed. I've interviewed some of those reporters over the years. That's not a day we can ever forget. And again, the people out there that spread conspiracy theories that this was some sort of inside job are probably the same people out there that believe that Donald Trump won the 2020 election and he's the next Messiah. The Marjorie Taylor Greene supporters out there. I try not to give people the time of day that talk like that. And I'm not saying that the government has always been honest with us, because they haven't. There certainly is a possibility that there were people within our government that had inklings or knew that something bad was going to happen and didn't act upon that. But I do not believe there was anybody in this country working in our government that wanted that to happen. I don't believe that. And I refuse to believe that. I'm glad that Osama bin Laden is dead. I'm glad that for the most part, Al-Qaeda has been dismantled. And I hope that continues to be the case. 2 days after 9/11, I remember I went out there, the site of the World Trade Center buildings. Couldn't get really close to it, but I was about 7-8 blocks away to pay my respects. And there's a lot of charity events that are going on in New York City and really throughout the country today. One of my friends who used to work for Cantor Fitzgerald, holding some events down there in New York City today. And the gentleman that we have with us right now, his name is Martin Langsfield. He's been advocating for a memorial for the victims. Sadly, he lost his sister, Nikki, and her husband in the Surfside collapse, and he has teamed up with 9/11 families to make this memorial. I don't know why it hasn't happened yet, and I appreciate you, Martin, for joining us. And let me just first say I'm so sorry for the loss of your sister. I lost my sister 8 months ago. I know, sadly, what you had to go through, and I do appreciate you joining us, Martin. How are you?
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me here, and I'm sorry for your loss. It's something that you only know. It doesn't get easier with time. It actually gets harder.
Yeah, no question. I'm with you. I agree with you 100%. Martin, can you tell me why you have decided to collaborate with these 9/11 families to try to get this memorial done?
These are things where you see on TV, you see these horrible tragedies, and then as time goes on, you kind of start to forget, or you don't feel it unless you're truly connected. And when some of these 9/11 victims started seeing my face on TV and seeing how broken I am, begging to see if my sister was dead or alive, because it was over 2 weeks of not knowing whether they were alive in the rubble. And Monica Aiken, who's the one that helped advocate for the memorial here in 9/11, she lost her husband, unfortunately, Patrick Aiken, 22 years ago. She flew to Miami to say a memorial needs to happen here. And she had a very big political fight to make that happen. It took over 10 years to make this 9/11 memorial happen, and no one knows about that. And over there, they actually put the land on the market in Surfside for sale before bodies were recovered. Before I knew whether my sister was dead or alive, this land was already for sale. And the developer, Damak from Dubai, he paid $120 million for this piece of land, which is, I also received 33% of my sister's body. Where's the rest? There's no dignity, there's no respect whatsoever in Miami-Dade County and Surfside in the state of Florida. And I've been in rooms behind closed doors with Governor DeSantis, Mayor Daniela Levin Cava, Mayor Shlomo Danziger. All of them say they want to help, but at the same time, when it's time to help, they turn the other way because it's too political.
Do you feel like and I'm so sorry, that's horrible to hear. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Do you feel like in the same aspect, New York, some people in New York are doing that to some of the victims' families, 9/11 victims? I don't understand. Explain this to me, Martin. How is it possible that we're now 22 years out from 9/11 and there's still no memorial for the victim? I don't understand that.
It's horrible. You would expect in any tragedy, especially like 22 years ago, a terror attack that killed thousands of people. Why did there have to be a fight for a memorial? This should be the first thing in someone's mind, especially when it's something like a terror attack. Why fight for 10 years and try to build over there? Because they were also trying to build on where these beautiful pools are now, where people go and pay their respects. Not everyone knows this, but they were trying to build hundreds of $millions worth of prime real estate here in New York. Mm-hmm. And then there were people like Monica Aiken, Mike Dempsey, these people who lost someone in 9/11 or survived 9/11 that had to fight to make it happen. And I see it now when we also have to fight to make it happen. And it just makes no sense. There's no respect whatsoever. This is all because of there's a lot of possible corruption going all around here, and there's just no respect whatsoever.
That's it's shocking to me that 22 years down the road and we still don't have a memorial for the victims of 9/11. Let me ask you this. Can you tell me a little bit about the events that you're going to today? I know you were just recently right at a Cantor Fitzgerald event. Tell me about the big names and the celebrities and the people that are supporting the cause and what you've been up to today so far.
I lost you for a second. Can you repeat that, please?
Sure. No problem. My question to you was, talk to me a little bit about the charity events that you've been involved with today and the day today and where you've been and some of the big name celebrity guests that have joined and collaborated with you guys at these events today.
Yeah, it was a beautiful event. It was the first time I ever go to one of these, and I see, even though many of them weren't involved there on 9/11 or some of them weren't even in New York, you can see how they're doing this they feel the pain. The whole country felt the pain on that day. I was just with Jim Leyritz, there were so many big names over there, and all of them they put they took their hat off of being professional players, actors, these big name people, all taking their hats off and paying their respects one day a year. It really opens your eyes and says, well, humanity is still out there. You could still pay your respects, and it's something that needs to continue forever. Because when I was in the memorial today in the morning, and I was speaking with Monica, I spent the morning with her. She was saying every year that goes by, less and less people start to come. It's really hard for families to go, and also people tend to, I don't know if not the word forget, but they tend to not feel what happened 22 years ago. But we can't forget what happened on this day. These towers just collapsed, killing thousands of people because of a horrific terror attack that we'll never have answers for.
Yeah. I mean, it's we can't forget. I agree with you 100%, and that's why every September 11th I try to dedicate the show to the victims, their families, their friends, the firefighters, the first responders, all the innocent people and the heroes of that day. And I couldn't agree with you more, Martin. How can people get involved if they want to help you and they want to join this cause and they want to get this memorial done? Who do they reach? Who do they talk to? And how can they help?
For the Surfside Memorial.
Both memorials, the Surfside and what you've collaborated with, a memorial, for 9/11 for families.
Yeah. Most importantly here is today is for 9/11. Yep. There's so many amazing organizations to collaborate with, which I was opened to. My eyes were open to them all today. It's honestly, I think one thing people should experience is coming here one time and seeing what it is like on 9/11 and seeing these families and seeing the people, because you don't see this. It's not as transparent when you see it on TV or there's a camera. You need to feel the density and the tragedy that happened here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
And that when you see it with your own eyes is when you're going to say, okay, now I want to help. How can I help? How can I make an impact? Should I make a charity? Should I make a non-for-profit for someone's name, for someone's honor, for what they were going to be, what were their dreams, something like that?
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. And that's why I will always talk about it and remind people of that day. Martin, let me just say again, I'm so sorry for the loss of your sister. And I'm so sorry the way politicians and people have treated the victims there. And I'm so grateful that there are people like you out there collaborating with others that have lost loved ones for the good of people. I just think it's incredible. Thank you so much for what you do. If there's anything else we can ever do for you, I'd happy to have you back on again, Martin. And I just want to appreciate you for your time and keep up the great work, my friend. Keep up the fight.
I appreciate you having me on this, Brian. And again, best of luck in the grieving process. It's not easy, but you got to get through it.
You're absolutely right. I agree with you. Martin, thank you so much. Pleasure to speak with you. Thank you. That's Martin Langsfield. He's advocating with the victims' families of 9/11 to try to put together some sort of memorial for the victim. How is that possible? We're 22 years out. We're going to be joined in a couple minutes by a man who survived the 9/11 attack and the October 1 attack. He's going to be joining us here any minute. And I can't wait to speak with him. His name is Mike Dempsey. And we'll be getting some more guests perhaps later on in the hour. But as I was saying earlier before Martin joined us, is that, I went back to the 9/11 site several days after the attack took place. I went with a friend of mine, went to college with me, said, why don't we drive down there? We're probably not going to get too close, but we got about 8 blocks away. Why? Because I wanted to pay my respects. I had a family member that was there that we visited, and I wanted to pay my respects and see it in person as opposed to on the news, because I only lived about an hour and a half, 2 hours away from Manhattan. Took a while to get down there. The traffic was crazy. So the closest we got was about 8 blocks away. What I remember from that day when I went there was the smell. The smell was something that I had never experienced before. And for lack of a better way of explaining it, it smelled like burning flesh. It was the worst smell in the world. And even when we got back into the car and drove back, we couldn't get the stench out of our car. My friend had to smoke a cigarette, and it was still in the car, and it was there. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that, and I don't regret going down there to see what it was like in person. The guy joining us right now is a man who not only survived the October 1 shooting here in Las Vegas, but also that fateful day 22 years ago. That morning, he was in the World Trade Center building. I mean, it's just it's an incredible story. My friend Mike Dempsey joining us right now on the line. He just came from a Cantor Fitzgerald event. I know he was just hanging out with Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban. Mike, I appreciate you coming on, my friend. How are you?
Good. Having a great day. By the way, Las Vegas, being there at Mandalay Bay, that was all your friend Brett Raymer's fault, because I was filming Tanked that weekend, and Brett said, "Come out here, I'll get my 5 minutes of fame." Actually, when that episode aired, I only was included on the closing credits. I got all the
I'll have to talk to Brett about that.
all the great acting I did, cutting room floor. I don't know what happened, Brett, but we're one guy. But he has to get me on something else big. Because
I'm sure he will. You're quite the character, and I will have to talk to him about that. But Mike, you just came from a charity event. Can you just tell us a little bit about this event you just came from? I mean, you just sent me some videos. You were just hanging out with everybody a couple hours ago, right? Matthew McConaughey. You were just hanging out. You sent me a video of you and Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban. You were just hanging out with. I mean, you're rubbing shoulders with some of the biggest names in Hollywood, who are all showing up to this event right earlier today for charity.
Well, when I'm in Vegas, I hang out with Brian Shapiro, by the way.
So sorry for you there.
But I will tell you that Cantor Fitzgerald Charity Day, for your viewers who would want to have the history, Cantor Fitzgerald lost 658 of their employees on 9/11, top floors at the One World Trade Center. And they had decided right away, Howard Lutnick, CEO, and his sister Edie, who lost their brother, Gary, okay, and put aside their grief and said, you know what, every year we want to donate and give back to other charities. So Cantor Fitzgerald Relief Fund was created for that purpose. Now, what happens is every year we have celebrities that come out for their respective charities. We have various charities, say Nicole Kidman, all the people you saw, Matthew McConaughey, Charlize Theron, my new girlfriend. I call her my future ex-wife, but I don't know if I can get away with that one. But I don't think she liked that joke. But it's an incredible day. They all go represent their own respective charities. Now, at the end of the day, which is really cool, Cantor, every broker donates their commissions, all their revenue donated, all the revenue they make today, every year 9/11, gets donated in a pot and sliced out to all the charities who are represented. So every year on average, $12 million. I hope we did better this year, but on average, $12 million. I think
that's incredible.
That's incredible. Million.
Yeah, that's just so cool. So when you talk to somebody like a Matthew McConaughey today, what do you guys talk about? I mean, do you talk about 9/11 and what this day means to him? What do you guys talk about?
I actually wanted a copy of his book because he has a book that just came out. And I said, Matthew, we've done this event many, many years. I didn't get a copy of your book. I hope it has a lot of pictures. I don't do a lot of reading these days. I'm over 50. So once you get over 50, you don't want to be reading. I want a picture book. But no, he was great. I mean, we had a great time. Kenan Thompson, representing the Christian Rivera Foundation. Great friend of mine. I mean, we just had a great time up there. He didn't dress up in the suit. Kenan's Kenan, so he can come any way he wants.
Very funny guy. Very funny guy.
Awesome guy. We just had a lot of fun. I mean, it was a lot of sports legends from New York. If you're a New York guy, the Henrik Lundqvist. I just ran to the other hockey player. I'll forget his name. Chris Kreider, I think his name is. I know you got Vegas Golden Knights, big hockey base there, but a lot of basketball, but really a lot of the actors. It's really fun to be around a lot of these guys. Jeffrey Dean Morgan, I love this guy. I didn't watch The Walking Dead, but now I got to watch that show.
That's a great show. Your story, we've talked about your story before. It's like no other person I've ever spoken to, how you can somehow figure out a way to survive October 1 while that shooting is going on. You're at Mandalay Bay, you're right in that area, and you were able to escape there. And then, of course, 9/11, your story of being in the Trade Center building and finding a way to get out of there. I forgot, how long before that building collapsed were you in that building? How long before that?
So when I was in 5 World Trade Center, you got to remember the World Trade Center had 7 buildings, right? Everybody thinks one tower, it was 7 buildings. I was in 5 World Trade Center, working for Credit Suisse, First Boston, top floor of 5 World Trade Center. I evacuated right away. I was in the building when the first plane shook. I was internet surfing. I think it was WWE Raw the night before. I was looking at Kurt Angle or something, wrestling fan, looking internet surfing when we were starting to do that. And I think the Giants game was looking at the score, and then building shook, right? So 5 World Trade Center was connected to 1. So we felt the impact the same. I think, look this up, Brian, but I believe the engine landed in the 5 World Trade Center, which set us off.
So you're in 5 World Trade Center when the actual first plane
Correct.
enters one of the World Trade Center. But that's unbelievable. And you obviously had no idea what happened, right? You just think it was an explosion?
Dude, we looked out the window. My boss, I remember, ran to his office, and it's like they were looking up at us. I remember that, just frozen, because they were. And I thought maybe a bomb. I didn't know. We didn't have TVs. The old World Trade Center was not very tech. Now they have the TV.
Right.
There you go. They didn't have that. So we heard, and we had a fire drill like a week and a half before. Everybody evacuated. It was I think it was a fire in a stairwell by the Borders bookstore. So I was like, oh, here we go again. It was kind of that annoyance, and then you realize it was very serious. So we got down. Instead of going out Vesey Street, and Brooklyn accent, I say, however I say it, I didn't go out that way because my wife worked for Tower 100 floor for Marsh McLennan. Now, we were at a Yankee game the night before. You remember the story. It got rained out, 2.5-hour rain delay. We didn't get home till like midnight, 1 o'clock, missed our Long Island Railroad train. Everyone's got a story like this, right? So we didn't get home till really late. I got up early and just had a new BlackBerry, Crackberry, whatever they called it. And so we didn't communicate that morning really because I left early. I thought she got on a different train. She was late to work. So she got an 8:06 train leaving Valley Stream, and she was getting to Penn Station at about 8:45. Now, the timing, 8:46 is when the building got hit. So by the time she got from Penn Station, 34th Street to the E train, that's how we did it, Long Island Railroad to the subway, she ended up at Canal Street. It was a frozen zone. They didn't let anybody pass that. So she couldn't get downtown. I didn't know that. So I went into Tower 1 looking for her. I went through the World Trade Center Mall. The mall was this old, big open area by the subways, the PATH station. Went to 1 World Trade Center. I think I got there probably right around 9 o'clock. So I did an orderly evacuation. Everything was orderly down 5 World Trade Center. But when I got to 1 World Trade Center, that's when the firefighters arrived, and I saw the glass blown out. And it was a scene like no other, like the scene, that movie with Jules Godet, the director.
Yes.
Yeah, like that. Those firefighters, they were arriving. That's what I saw. Now I can't get a signal on the phone. Obviously, we know why. So I go out by the other side. It was a Sam Goody. It was an old record store back in the day that New York people would know Sam Goody. It was on,
I know Sam Goody. I'm from Connecticut.
it was on Liberty Street and Greenwich. So go out that way on Liberty Street, Greenwich. Smart move because it was the other side of the building. That was 2 World Trade Center. As I go outside, instantaneously, I hear this big, loud sound barreling, which was that plane going toward Tower 2. Boom.
So you're on the ground walking at the time the second plane hits Tower 2.
I didn't have a chance. So as I got outside, remember, you're frozen. It's like one of these things you're looking up, like everybody did.
Right.
Reactions. I was one of those. And I got trampled because I was facing the opposite way of people who were running for their lives, right? So I fell face forward, got knocked out. A fractured skull was one of my injuries, which is one of the reasons I'm having. We'll talk about CTE if you have time on another show about my concussion-related issues from football prior to my working career. But I had fractured skull, but I was knocked out. I don't remember anything till I was found in City Hall Park. Now, you being anybody from New York on your show would know that City Hall Park is about 3 or 4 blocks, good blocks from the World Trade Center. Somebody.
You're still in a danger zone, though. I mean, when the buildings are collapsing, that's still a big danger zone.
Correct. Yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't know how long I was out under point of impact. While people were hit by debris. Remember, different engine blocks away. I'm under it, so how I'm lucky that I didn't get killed from being under glass. Everything was falling down, raining.
And they're still finding debris now. They're still finding it in crevices between buildings and stuff. In fact, 2 people were just DNA identified that lost their lives that day just a couple days ago. So I mean, this is still fresh in some people's minds. I mean, let me just say that I'm so glad that you and your loved one made it, and I'm glad that you were able to get out of there. But there are a lot of people that have, I guess you could call it, guilt that you're still alive. Now, I don't know if you feel that, but I know some people feel that. I wish they didn't. Do you feel that? Do you like, why me? Why is it that I survived 9/11? I survived October 1. Have you ever felt that way?
Survivor guilt was very heavy on me. Remember, Cantor Fitzgerald was more my survivor guilt. So Cantor Fitzgerald, who I do the charity for every year, they'd give me a job offer right before 9/11. I accepted it. I backed out last minute, stayed in the job. It's actually had the first job of my career where the bosses liked me. I screwed up every job right in my 20s.
Sounds like me.
I had a job. I had a guardian angel, I call him Hal, who was my boss at Credit Suisse, and I stayed. I had a better offer. I remember the time, I could say this, and now it's compensation related, but I was making like 82.5 back in the day when I was like 29 years old. It was a big
That's
money.
pretty good salary
Yeah,
for a 29-year-old.
I was offered 100 to go work for Cantor, and I turned 100 down to stay at that firm and to save my life. And I had more connections to Cantor, and that's why I'm so affiliated with Cantor every year. But that burned me. So after I got out of the hospital, I was taken to Beekman, NYU downtown, and then I was at Mercy Medical in Rockville Center for 4 days. When I got out, I was a mess, right? So now I'm thinking, who do I lose from Cantor? I knew a lot of people there. They reached out to me and got me in a bereavement group with all widows. Now I'm in this bereavement group in end of September. Awkward. I mean, I'm a survivor. And they said the same thing to me. Why did you survive? My husband didn't make it. It was a really weird first meeting. And I have a beautiful lady in my group, Felice Zaslow. I'd like to get you a copy of the book you can share with your listeners. She will chronicle that book, and you should really have her on your show. Her husband, Ira, worked for Lehman Brothers, and she was in that group too. And she reached out to me. She goes, "You belong here, Mike. You need." And you know what? That group in the second, third, fourth group, oh, they were the best. We became like this breakfast club, kind of group that it really helped me. And then, Cantor Fitzgerald, I mean, I kind of became part of their family. That's why I'm going to their memorial in about half an hour. I got to leave for their memorial. They have a separate memorial for their employees. So it's pretty cool how I got involved with that. But yeah, there was a lot of survivor guilt. I think my giving back, being involved in charity related stuff for them is probably a result of that survivor guilt, right? I mean, why would you?
It is. But Mike, the thing is that, and I talk about this on my show all the time. There are people out there like yourself who survive these kind of events and do so much to help others. I have Fred Gutenberg on my show all the time. Great man. Yeah, I know you know him, and he lost his daughter, sadly, in the Parkland shooting. He is a hero and a champion, as I would say the same for you. He does, him for gun rights, and you just help victims. You talk about your daughter a lot, I know, and your family, and you just help so many people along the way in your life, Mike. And I just love the work that you're doing and that you will continue to do. And I just think it's very inspiring. People like you are very inspiring. And hey, if you run into any great Yankee legends, let me know. We'd love to have them on the show tomorrow. But
I had favorites with me a few minutes ago, but Jim had to get back. He's got
okay.
Got 5
I'd love to get Jim on the show. Maybe we can do that this week or something. I'd love to do that.
Yeah, the Yankee. I mean, it was blessed. I just came back from Old Timers Day. As you know, I worked with the Yankees organization as well for many, many years, doing community work, helping them on their charities. I was just around Yankees Old Timers Day with Ron Guidry all weekend, and
oh wow,
Peter, all these guys, and Tino Martinez, a great friend of mine. But I'm blessed. I'm blessed because I had this experience. I lived my early on in my days, I had my football dream and getting there and then getting hurt. And now you got baseball, the Yankees. I've had a great, some of my Yankee stories that you've probably seen.
Oh, yeah. We've talked about those. Those are some pretty amazing stories. Yeah.
By the way, Gronk, we were talking today. Gronk and I were supposed to box last year. I decided not to because I don't want to. You
probably made a good decision.
I don't want to hurt his pretty face. I told Gronk, I said, man, I can't do it. I did fight at Mickey Ward's gym last year against the Cruiserweight champion. I survived.
I remember that. Yep. I remember that. We talked about that. You seem to definitely get around, and you do a lot to raise money, but you also have fun doing it, which I admire.
Boring life, Brian. You know that. I mean, I'm not as Brett Raymer. By the way, plug Stallone's Las Vegas.
Yes, great restaurant.
Tell him where
you.
Yep. Need a plug for Brett because
sure. I met you through Brett Raymer, who just opened up his second Stallone's at Santa Fe. We've talked about that, and Brett's just a great guy, and I've met some great people through Brett. You're certainly one of them, and I can't thank you enough, Mike, for coming on the show. And I know you're going to be going to another event today. I'd love to hear about that. We'll certainly talk about that later. But I appreciate you coming on.
Brett always talks politics with you. I don't. I'm kind of apolitical.
We're going to do that next segment.
Brian, I tell you, last thing I got to plug is I just hung out with President Bill Clinton, man. Cool dude. I love Bill.
Wow.
I was with Ron DeSantis this morning. Now, you can say what you want, but I had a great He was amongst the crowd. He didn't even go into the area where all the politicians hide. He was out there. I got to show whatever. I don't really follow a lot of politics. I mean, I'm too busy to follow what everybody stands for. But he showed a lot of class by showing up, being with the people, shaking their hands, and just was there. An average. Every other politician there, Kamala, everybody else, they were like behind. And it's like the 9/11 family's there. It's our event, not theirs, right? So
Let me talk about this with you because this is important. As much as I don't like Ron DeSantis, I want to talk to you about this before I let you go. You're telling me that the vice president was there today in New York City, and you had a bunch of other politicians there, and the only person that was shaking hands and being personable with the victims' families was Ron DeSantis?
Yes, and he rolled out a 9/11 education program today in Florida. One of my charities is the 9/11 September 11th Education Trust. And look, I don't follow all his agenda issues. I do a lot of stuff with Chuck Schumer. I'm the most Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever you can call. I stand right by the middle. But he showed a lot of class, and that showed me something. Nobody else did that but him today. So, got to give kudos to him. We don't always support everything our politicians do, right? We're always going to disagree, any politician, Democrat, Republican, Independent. But I got to say that he showed me something. Obviously, when we had Barack Obama, I was a John McCain guy, right? But Obama shook hands with every 9/11 family member.
Very personable guy.
Yep. He went to the pit with Ground Zero. It was 2008, I swear. And God rest his soul for McCain. But he walked right up the ramp past us and just like went, where obviously Obama, he stopped and shook every hand. I remember talking to him, having a real conversation for 30 minutes.
Well, you know what? I'll give Ron DeSantis a lot of credit then for doing that. He did the right thing. I don't know why the vice president didn't decide to speak to the families. I think that's absurd and disgusting. And that goes for any other politician that didn't take the time to shake the hands of all the victims' family members. And I do give Ron DeSantis credit for that. And I'm glad you shared that with us because I'm going to put that on social media.
I think the other guy thinks that 9/11 happened in Alaska. Wasn't he in Alaska today, our president? A little bit surprised, but he might have been asleep on the plane. Maybe.
Well, I will say this as well, and I will agree with you on this. I give credit where credit is due, and I give criticism where criticism is due.
You do.
Joe Biden should have been in New York City today. Joe Biden should have been at the 9/11 site today. Yeah. And I agree with you 100%. I don't care where he was today. This should have been priority number one. He should have been there. I agree with you. The fact that the vice president wasn't shaking hands and being personable to people, I'm not a Kamala Harris fan either, and this is one of the reasons for it. She's just not very good with people, and I'm glad that and Barack Obama the opposite. So it shouldn't be about politics. It shouldn't be about whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. And I'm glad Ron DeSantis took some time to speak with people and shake hands, and I appreciate that. Mr. Mike Dempsey, you're also a very personable guy, and I appreciate you coming on. You got my vote anytime.
Well, man,
look forward to it.
Kamala, there was a wrestler named Kamala, the Ugandan giant in the WWE in the 80s. I met him years ago. I did shake hands with one Kamala. I didn't shake hands with the other.
Different one, that's for sure. I think I remember that guy, by the way. Hey, Mike, thanks so much for coming on. Have fun at some of these other charity events that you're going to, my friend. And I really do appreciate you taking the time as always. And we'll talk soon, okay?
Sounds good, bro. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. That's Mike Dempsey, personal friend who survived the October 1 shooting and 9/11. I mean, you want to talk about a crazy story, right? The guy was in Building 5 when the first plane hit the World Trade Center tower. And then after the second plane hit, he got a concussion as he was trying to get out of there. And he found himself waking up after 3 or 4 blocks away. I mean, that's just a wild story, man. I'm glad he made it. And I'm so glad the great work that he is doing, helping others. He's helped so many other people along the way. How about that? Rubbing shoulders today with Bill Clinton, Matthew McConaughey. He sent me the videos. I've seen them all. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban, just to name a few. So it's pretty damn awesome. Pretty cool. We can't forget that day. We can't forget. How about those brave firefighters and police officers that were going up the stairs that day, who lost their life trying to save others? The people that were on those floors that were trapped, that made final goodbye phone calls to their loved ones. The people on those planes that probably knew they were in a lot of trouble and made phone calls to their loved ones as well. to the first responders that have suffered with breathing issues and have died years later and continue to suffer, some of them, from breathing in all those toxins. We can't forget that day. We can't forget the brave men and women who lost their lives that day. We can't forget all those innocent victims who were doing nothing wrong, who just had another day at work, who were just trying to make a living. And we can't forget about the freedoms we have in this country. Yeah, we have a lot of issues in this country. There's no question. But we can't forget that we are still the land of the free. And there are some countries and some people in the world that hate us for that. The freedoms that we have, the freedom to be able to go outside and go on a public sidewalk and say what you want. Go after a politician and show their distaste, or somebody like me to go on the radio. But I give credit where credit is due as well. As much as I despise Ron DeSantis as a human being, he did the right thing today, and I give him credit for that. He showed some humanity, and I'd like to think he didn't do it because he wants to be the next president. He did it because it was the right thing to do. And I'm very disappointed that Joe Biden wasn't there today. I'm very disappointed that the vice president wasn't shaking hands and meeting with victims. That's wrong. That's wrong. And I have no problem with the president being called out for that. And I don't want to hear any excuses. Well, he had this meeting. He had that meeting. Too bad. Don't schedule anything on September 11th. The only thing that should have been scheduled on Joe Biden's, whatever you'd like to call it, other than schedule, the only thing that should have been on his agenda was New York City today. I don't care how old he is. I don't care what other meetings he had. Hold them off. He should have been in New York City today meeting with the families. Or at a minimum, maybe in Pennsylvania, meeting with those families, or at the Pentagon, where that plane went down. Whatever the case may be, he should have been at this, I think, New York City. And as much as I despise George W. Bush, and I do, in my opinion, one of the inspiring moments of his presidency, I don't think there were many, when he took that megaphone at the World Trade Center site after 9/11, and he said, "I hear you, and the world hears you." And that was a really poignant, statement that he made, and I thought it was inspiring. Now, you could also talk about the 8 or 9 minutes that he froze in front of those kindergartners. That was embarrassing. But yeah, this is George W. Bush, and this is that soundbite that I was talking about, and I thought it was a good moment in his presidency. Yeah, that was a nice moment. Kudos to the former president. I thought that was a nice moment. We can disagree with a lot of his decision making, but he showed some leadership there, and those were encouraging words. And he was right there on the World Trade Center site where so many people lost their lives. I do want to bring a listener on the line real quickly because he is a former firefighter. I think we have Edward on the line right now, who was a former firefighter. So I think he could relate a little bit to what I'm talking about when I talk about the firefighters that lost their lives on 9/11. Hi, Edward. Thanks for calling in. How long were you a firefighter for?
I'm still a firefighter.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, so I appreciate you doing that. That's awesome. So what do you
appreciate you paying your taxes?
Sure. What would you what message would you send to the victims' families and all those firefighters and first responders that lost their lives on 9/11 22 years ago?
Brian, I wouldn't say anything. I would just listen.
Sometimes that's the best thing we can do, isn't it? Is listen.
Yeah.
I remember I've had so many victims of victims' families and friends October 1, and that's what I try to do. I'll ask them a question, and then I just sit here and I just listen to them tell the story of the loved one that lost their lives. I mean, have you ever been in a situation, Edward, as a firefighter, I would imagine, where you go into a burning building and you think to yourself, I might not make it out of here?
Yeah, but that's where I put my faith in God, and it makes me humble.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, I just get a little choked up today, but Brian,
No,
I'm really
I
proud to be an
understand.
American. I'm proud to be an American, man. I hate the politics. I hate the drama.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Well,
love my
today,
country, man. We didn't deserve this, man.
mhm.
I love my
I
country.
agree.
You know,
Today should not have, when we talk about 9/11, it shouldn't be about politics, you know? Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I feel you. And, you know, you being a firefighter, obviously this hits home. And, you know, when we talk about 9/11, that's why I get really frustrated. You know, I was just praising
Yeah.
Ron DeSantis. Edward, I think you know me. I don't think I've ever done that in my life. I did it today.
no,
Because listen,
first time for everything.
yeah, that's right. Listen, the guy was there. I appreciate the fact that he was shaking people's hands and being personable with people and talking with people. And I'm calling out Joe Biden and their administration. Joe Biden should have been there. You know, he should be there. And I'm glad the vice president was there, but it doesn't sound to me like she was really shaking hands or talking with some of the victims' families. And maybe I'm wrong on
Or
that, but
just listening.
I'm getting a firsthand account from my friend Mike, who was there. You know, this isn't a day where it should be about politics when we're talking about 9/11, even though I probably will be talking about politics in about 5 minutes. But
Yeah.
no, Edward, I'm with you, man. It's an emotional day. And that's why I try to get guests on to share their experiences, which I have. And I salute people like you. You know, I salute, as I talk about this on the show all the time, our first responders, people like you, firefighters, police officers, medics, you know, the people that lost their lives that day or any day, you know, risking their lives for others. And I really do appreciate what you do, Edward, very much.
Today is the day, Brian, where we put our differences to the side and just be connected. You know, today, just take
Sure.
a moment out and just pray, or just say thank you,
Sure.
or just take a minute to remember and never
Amen.
forget.
Amen, brother. I couldn't agree with you more. And I appreciate you calling in and thank you for what you do as a firefighter and any other firefighter out there. You guys risk your life every single day for the sake and good of the people. And you're all heroes, Edward. And I appreciate you calling in. Thank you so much, brother. Keep doing what you're doing.
I'm proud. Hey, Brian,
Yes, sir.
I'm proud to be an American.
As am I, sir. As am I. Absolutely. And you are the definition of what a real patriot is, risking your life for others. Ed, thanks for calling in, my friend. Appreciate you.
Later, y'all. Peace.
Yep. That is the definition of what a patriot is. A patriot is somebody that, in my opinion, number one, puts others before themselves. That's my definition of what a patriot is. A firefighter, a police officer, a first responder, a doctor. Not somebody that raises a flag that says, I support a political candidate. Notice how I didn't even say Trump or Biden. Anybody. Although we see more people doing that with the MAGA flags, but that's another story for maybe the next segment. You're not a patriot because you're in your car and you have a MAGA flag. You're not a patriot because you're in your boat and you have a MAGA. You know, that doesn't make you a patriot. I think it makes you an idiot, quite frankly. Edward's a patriot. The people who lost their lives that day are patriots. The brave men and women in uniform are patriots. Those are the real patriots. People like Mike Dempsey, he's a patriot. My first guest, Martin Langsfield, he's a patriot. That word gets thrown around and I get really angry. I really do. But then again, these days I get angry at a lot of things. That's why Chris Wynn isn't doing the show with me today. But anyway, that's another story for another show. Chris will be back, I'm sure, next week. But anyway, I do want to take a break. I went really long this segment. My apologies for that. But when we come back, oh boy, it's going to be fun. Now we're going to have a little bit of fun. Vivek Ramaswamy got absolutely destroyed in an interview on MSNBC over the weekend. Absolutely destroyed by Mehdi Hassan. We're going to play that for you coming up next. You're not going to want to miss it. And then coming up in hour number 2, the Raiders get a W on the road, barely, against a really bad team. Did we learn anything about this Raiders team? Well, Gully, Mr. Goldbrinson will be joining us from Silver and Black Today podcast to do that in hour number 2 and review the Raiders' Week 1 win. Take a quick break. Be back right after this. You're listening to Pushing the Limits right here on KSHP.
Hey, everybody, are you struggling to find a place that reminds you of Brooklyn? That true blue New York style pie? Well, worry no more. Stallone's Italian Eatery Pizza is a knockout. Located at 467 East Silverado Ranch Boulevard, just off of Rainier Road, half a mile east of South Point Casino, just minutes from the Las Vegas Strip. Come by and grab a slice of pie. Plus, check out our Brooklyn-inspired Italian cuisine. Our sandwiches are super hero, that is, because why be a sub when you can be a hero? Stallone's Italian Eatery is here to serve you phenomenal food, Vegas. Forget about it.
Hey, everybody, it's Brian Shapiro from Pushing the Limits. I want to tell you guys about Sahara West Urgent Care and Wellness. They're conveniently located on the southwest corner of Sahara and Jones. They're open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. At Sahara West Urgent Care, they'll take care of all your healthcare needs. They offer routine services such as physicals, STD testing, car accident treatment, and work injuries. You name it, they do it. They have on-site X-ray, EKG, ultrasound, and labs. They treat chronic conditions such as asthma, blood pressure, diabetes, and more. They also offer general wellness exams, treatments such as testosterone enhancement, and cancer screening. They're located on Sahara, 6125 West Sahara Avenue. Their number is 702-248-0554. And the best part, they accept most major insurances and affordable cash pay prices, office visits starting at just $95. And I'm also a client. So please give them a call, 702-248-0554.
Shopping is always easy with the Radio Shopping Show. Whether it's shopping during any one of our live shows right here on AM 1400 or listening live on the KSHP app, you can always call in at 702-221-7283 to pick up great deals with your favorite host. Or shop 24/7 at kshp.com. Go to kshp.com and select Shopper's Guide to browse hundreds of businesses featured on the show. Place your order online and we'll have it shipped right to your front door. With so many possibilities, it's hard not to shop.
Open Road Radio, Monday night at 6 on KSHP, North Las Vegas, AM and FM, 829-68B, North Las Vegas, and KSHP.com.
All right, welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits on a Monday. Thank you so much for joining us. It's good to be back, being a little bit under the weather. I'm going to be checking out Jackson's Bar and Grill today after the show. They got some great September promos, including every Sunday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. You earn 300 points, and you automatically receive $50 in free play. That's pretty awesome. Some restrictions do apply, but it's a great place to watch NFL games on TV. And Wednesdays is Wheel Spin Wednesdays. With your card, you earn up to 4 chances of spinning the wheel to win up to $3,000. Win just for playing at Jackson's. We love Jackson's Bar and Grill, and please tell them that I sent you. We had some special guests in hour number 1. Of course, on this day 22 years ago, 9/11, where we lost so many innocent lives. But listen, the presidential elections of 2024 are literally right around the corner, and politics still continue. And we had Vivek Ramaswamy on this show. What was that, a few weeks ago? They didn't give me much time to talk to him, so I really didn't get an opportunity to debate him, but I'm hoping that I was told when he comes to Vegas, and he will be coming to Vegas soon, we'll get Vivek Ramaswamy in studio. But he had an interview on MSNBC that turned into an absolute disaster. So, to give you a little bit of background on Vivek, who, by the way, is the number 3 Republican right now, running for president, which is mesmerizing to me. Vivek Ramaswamy is against affirmative action, like so many Republicans are. And it turns out that Vivek Ramaswamy took advantage of affirmative action and got a free $50,000 Soros scholarship after he had already made $1 million from his hedge fund. $1 million this guy made. This guy already had a lot of money, and he accepted a $50,000 scholarship because of the color of his skin and where he came from. This is the guy that's against affirmative action. I want you to listen to part of this interview that Vivek Ramaswamy did on MSNBC with Mehdi Hassan, where they're talking about this very issue. Have a listen to this. Dead air. So we have Vivek Ramaswamy, who is against affirmative action. He's against affirmative action. And here's a guy who made $1 million in 2 years and then applies for this scholarship. Lying, by the way, he didn't make $200,000. Mehdi Hassan got him there, and he doesn't want to talk about specifics that might make him look bad. Let me repeat. This was a Soros scholarship for immigrants coming to this country with little money. Vivek Ramaswamy had boatloads of money in his bank account when he was in his 20s. Boatloads of money. So not only is this a guy that is against affirmative action and then took advantage of his skin color and where he came from and took an affirmative action scholarship, but he also took that scholarship when he had boatloads of money in his bank account and he could have paid to go to law school, but he didn't do that. So here we have somebody who's lying. We have somebody who's a hypocrite. And I would argue Vivek Ramaswamy, not a nice man. You're taking a scholarship away from somebody who needed it clearly more than you did. There's a lot of immigrants that are very intelligent that come to this country that don't have the financial means. And Vivek Ramaswamy took that scholarship away from them, a guy who had made $1 million from his hedge fund. I'm yelling because this gets me so damn angry. The guy made $1 million in 2 years, proven from his tax records that he released. And he's trying to lie and tell you, well, I only had a couple $100,000. No, you didn't. You're a liar. You made $1 million in 2 years. You took this Soros scholarship, and it'd be one thing if you were for affirmative action. I would still have a problem with this because you had a lot of money, and that's what affirmative action shouldn't be about, people getting scholarships that have boatloads of money. It should be about helping people that don't have the means to go to college, not intelligence-wise or grades-wise, financial-wise. Vivek Ramaswamy had the financial means to go to college 5 times over. And he took this scholarship from other people, used his skin color, used where he came from, took this affirmative action Soros scholarship. And now he wants to be on a stage and tell people that he's against affirmative action? Bull crap! He is full of it. And you know what? I can give you other examples of Republicans from a local level or a national level that are absolute hypocrites on the right. I'm going to give you a perfect example right now. There is a local politician, failed politician, by the way. Thank God he lost his election to Stephen Horsford, but a Republican by the name of Sam Peters. Let me give you a little bit of background. He was running for office. This Republican named Sam Peters is against student loan debt forgiveness. Now, listen, if you're against student loan debt forgiveness, fine. I would disagree with you, but I'm willing to have that debate with you. Tell me why you're against it. No problem. Let's at least have a conversation. Here's the problem. In a debate, Sam Peters was exposed for taking PPE loans with his local business, and those loans were forgiven. So on one end, he's against student loan forgiveness, but if he owns a business, it's okay for him to take loans and not pay them back. I want you to listen to this audio because it happened in a debate, and in my opinion, it's one of the reasons why he lost to Stephen Horsford. Yet another Republican, same idea, hypocrite, Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm against affirmative action unless it benefits me. Then I'll take that $50,000 scholarship, use the color of my skin, because I'm a fraud. Same thing with this guy, Sam Peters, who's a Republican. Exact same thing. They're a bunch of hypocrites. Listen to this cut.
I can show you the documents on
And
that
Mr.
if you
Peters,
like.
do you acknowledge that you did have the loan forgiven, that you're not going to repay it?
I had 72. I took a loan for the PPP for $72,000. It allowed me to pay every one of my employees. None of my employees lost a single hour of pay. Dominique, a single mother, a child at home of 4 years old, was able to keep food on her table during a 2-year-long shutdown because of these funds. Yes, I took those funds because in a shutdown scenario that we were under, my business lost over 25% of revenue for 2 years straight.
Because we are in a
But you did have that loan forgiven.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes, I did. As part of the program that was put forward, that loan was forgiven. Yes,
Right, right. So it's okay for a Republican named Sam Peters to take out a loan that's forgiven if it helps him. And you know what I find so interesting about this? So similar to Vivek, these hypocrites. Notice how this guy just tells the story about how he was able to, continue to pay the salary of a mother to put food on the table for her kids. What about all the people out there that have student loans? You don't think they have sad stories? You don't think some of these people are struggling? But as long as it benefits him and his employees, he's okay with a forgiven loan. But if it helps other people that have nothing to do with him, no, I'm against student loan forgiveness. It is the epitome of hypocrisy. It's okay for me to do it if it helps me and benefits me. Vivek Ramaswamy, I'm going to go back to him. He says and preaches that how he's against affirmative action scholarships. He's against affirmative action in general. He's on the record as saying that. But yet this was the same guy who took an affirmative action scholarship, a Soros affirmative action scholarship. And what makes this even worse, besides being a hypocrite, is he took that scholarship away from someone else who normally would not have had the financial means to go to school. Vivek Ramaswamy released his tax returns. Well, guess what? It's backfired on him. Because in 2009 and 2010, he made upwards of $1 million from his hedge fund. Let me repeat that. $1 million, not even 100,000, $1 million. Now, he wants to lie and claim that he only had a couple 100,000 in his bank account. By the way, I don't believe that for a second. He made $1 million in 2 years, yet he accepted a George Soros, I'm sorry, not George Soros, his brother, a Soros scholarship. And he made quoted as claimed that he needed the scholarship because he didn't have the money. That is a bald-faced lie. Vivek Ramaswamy is a liar. He is a liar. Now, the argument here isn't whether he broke the law or not. That's not the argument that I'm making. Vivek Ramaswamy didn't break the law. Vivek Ramaswamy is a hypocrite and a liar. That's what I'm saying. I'm not claiming that a law was broken. I'm claiming that he took a scholarship when he had the financial means where he could have paid for college. He had boatloads of money. And he took an affirmative action Soros scholarship. This man claims that he is anti-affirmative action unless it benefits him. That's the case with Republicans today. Many of them. Not all of them, but many of them. Just like the local politician in the audio I just played for you. There's so many other Republicans like that are against student loan forgiveness debt, yet they took their PPE loans and their loans were forgiven. And then they'll say, well, it was for my employees. Well, it did good things for this. But yet when it comes to everybody else, don't want to help them, only if it helps me and my employees. That's what these Republicans do. They're against student loan forgiveness. And then if you look at their backgrounds in business, they took the PPE loans during COVID. They didn't have to pay those back because they are hypocrites and they are liars. And Vivek Ramaswamy is a hypocrite and he's a liar. And he was exposed for that in this interview. And I want to play you a little bit more audio, and then we'll take some phone calls at 702-221-7283. And again, if you want to be a part of the program, you think I'm right, you think I'm wrong, 702-221-SAVE, 702-221-7283. Many of these Republicans, what they do is they're afraid of Donald Trump. They're afraid to say anything negative about Donald Trump. They're afraid. Here's a perfect example of that. Vivek Ramaswamy, in this interview, he was quoted on Twitter going after Donald Trump. But then when asked about it, he refuses to answer what is a very, very basic question that Mehdi Hasan is trying to ask him. I want you to listen to this exchange in its entirety because it's mesmerizing.
You say he behaved in downright abhorrent behavior that makes him a danger to democracy.
Yes,
what was it that was downright? Tell me what he did that was downright abhorrent.
Let's actually be really fair to your audience. So on January 10th, 2021, thereabouts, days after that incident, I wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal arguing that censorship was the real cause of what happened on January 6th. When asked in response, somebody asked me the question, are you... That's what I wrote. I'm giving you the fact of what I said. That's a hard fact. That was published in the Wall Street Journal. When pressed on, was that condoning what Trump did? My answer was no. There's a difference between a bad judgment and a crime.
And
we
you're
need to
my
be
question.
able to tell the difference in this country.
What did Donald Trump do,
no, I'm not avoiding
in your view, that was downright abhorrent? Second time
I think that the thing that I would have done differently if I were in his shoes
not what I asked,
is I would have declared re-election on January 7th.
I'll ask it a third
That's exactly the thing I would have done.
What did Trump do that was egregious, quote, downright abhorrent, and a danger to democracy? Can you just explain to our viewers? Your words.
So you're mixing two different quotes. But what did I think was reprehensible about what happened that day? Look, I think that the way a true leader should have handled that situation should have been to actually say, this is me running for re-election, not actually litigating what is already passed and behind us. And I would have done things differently. That is not a crime, though, what he did.
I understand.
And the reason I have been so vehement.
You keep saying what you would have done. I just want to hear from your mouth. No, unless you're scared of him, why won't you say what he did that was downright abhorrent?
I'm not going to let you stitching together three things from three different places to create a caricature. Do you want to have an actual conversation?
Yes, I want you to answer my question, Vivek. Three times I've asked it.
He won't answer it. Let's be very clear here. Vivek Ramaswamy said some things that I agree with in that tweet. He said Donald Trump did that day on January 6th was abhorrent, egregious, and a danger to democracy. I couldn't agree with that more. But then when asked about that tweet, over and over again, by the way, and it continued, and he never really answered the question, what did Donald Trump do that day specifically that you would say was abhorrent and egregious and a danger to democracy? Vivek doesn't want to answer the question. And the reason why he doesn't want to answer the question is not because he doesn't know the answer. I think we all know the answer. The reason why he doesn't want to answer that question is because he'll lose some of the Trump supporters and he'll lose some of the base of Republicans. Some of those Republicans who don't want to hear anything negative about Donald Trump. And if they hear any presidential candidate call out the truth in regards to Donald Trump, they lose support. That's why Vivek Ramaswamy won't answer that question. And Mehdi Hasan, I thought he did a wonderful job in that interview. And all he did was speak the truth, facts, things that Vivek said, quotes, direct quotes, and facts about his taxes and the scholarship he took. That's all this guy did on MSNBC. He spoke truth. He spoke facts. So Mehdi Hasan was asked about this interview, and I want to play this audio for you. So he was asked about this interview, and he was asked about what he thought about Vivek and his non-answering of some of these very important direct questions. And here is what Mehdi had to say about that. Have a listen to this.
There are two big issues with Ramaswamy. One is, what is his qualification to be president of the United States?
Fair
and the other
question.
is, can we trust anything he says? And those were the two themes I stuck to. He was a little irked by that. He did the kind of, oh, these are gotchas. Why can't we talk about substance? But my point is, why would I want to discuss the details of your peace plan for Ukraine before we first establish whether you should be president, right? Like, anyone can say, I've got a plan for Ukraine. You go on the internet right now, 100 people have opinions on Ukraine. The issue is, why this guy? What's he going to do about it? How can we trust him? And I think, what I tried to do, I asked him about, he used to criticize Trump. And now he doesn't, because he probably wants to be Trump's vice president. So I put that to him. And, the Soros stuff you just played. This is a man who attacks George Soros. He took a scholarship from the Soros family, from Soros's brother, an affirmative action scholarship, which he claims to hate. And then he said, I didn't have the money for it. And I challenged him. He said, I never said that. That's another thing he does, Chris. He just denies things that are on tape.
Yeah, that's really bad. And Mehdi Hasan is 100% correct. Here's a guy who has direct quotes. Either they're on Twitter or in interviews. And then he pretends like he didn't say them, and he lies about them. It's really bizarre. And then he releases his tax returns, which I think is a very good thing, to be transparent. But then when people actually call him out on his tax returns, he lies and he distorts what he made. I'm like, well, why did you release your tax returns to begin with if you didn't want people to see them and challenge you on them? The fact of the matter is that Vivek Ramaswamy is a slime ball. He's a liar. He's a hypocrite. He's certainly not qualified to be the next president of the United States or vice president or anything. That's the bottom line. And, these people that I talk about on this show every day that are the biggest hypocrites in the world. I mean, I can correlate this to the Cheney family. Liz Cheney, listen, I respect Liz Cheney for doing the right thing when it comes to Donald Trump. I'll always have respect for her for that. But Dick Cheney, her father, they were very anti-gay. They were very anti-LGBT community until they found out that they had a member of the family that was gay, and then all of a sudden they changed their ways. It's like, until it happens to you, when it's convenient for Vivek to take an affirmative action scholarship, he'll take it, even though he has boatloads of money in the bank. But then when he wants to run for president, he gives the red meat of the Republican base by saying, I'm against affirmative action. That is the definition of a hypocrite. Now, if you agree or disagree with me, I'd love to hear from you. Why am I wrong here? You don't think Vivek is a hypocrite? Do you see nothing wrong with what he did? I'll open up the phone lines at 702-221-7283. And again, that number, if you would like to be a part of the conversation, I will say it slowly so my MAGA friends can write it down on a piece of paper. I'll say it especially slowly for you. Area code 702-221-SAVE. Even though I can't promise to save any brain cells on this show. I can't make that promise to you. I can try, but I can't promise. Again, that number, if you want to be a part of the conversation, is 702-221-7283, if you would like to be a part of the program. I find this to be extremely troubling. I find this to be par for the course for so many Republicans out there, and I do find it also interesting that on a day 22 years ago, on 9/11, there are Republicans that have the gall to go on social media today and blame Democrats for 9/11, blame Democrats for healthcare and all these other things, when in return, Democrats have been trying to pass laws time and time again to give people proper healthcare to help the victims of 9/11 and the first responders, and Republicans are the ones that keep shooting it down. Democrats are the ones who tried to get our brave men and women in uniform proper health care when they were having lung issues, breathing issues, but the case be. And Republicans kept voting no until Jon Stewart decided to get involved. And Jon Stewart and the Democrats helped persuade enough Republicans to pass the bill to help people. If you think I'm giving out any misinformation, then go ahead and call in and tell me what I'm saying that is misinformation. Because the 9/11 slush fund voted down by Republicans time and time again. You can look it up if you don't believe me. Because anybody can just throw something at a wall and hope and say, oh, Brian, you're lying. Brian, it's misinformation. No, it's not. And when you look at the overwhelming majority of governmental programs that can help people in general, not just 9/11 victims, not just brave men and women in uniform, the overwhelming majority of bills that are attempted to be passed by the left, it could be health care. It could be raising minimum wage. It could be maternity leave. It could be a food baby shortage bill. It could be gun control. Republicans always seem to vote no. Tell me right now, give me a bill that Republicans have passed or attempted to pass that would make your prescription drugs cheaper. Joe Biden helped pass that bill recently. Give me a situation where a Republican said, you know what, enough about the gun violence in this country. We need to do something about it. Give me a bill that Republicans proposed that would help 9/11 victims and their families. Give me a bill that Republicans proposed that would help a single mother raise a child. Now, yes, Republicans do want to take away a mother's opportunity to have an abortion. Republicans do want to do that. There are some, not all, but there are some Republicans within the party that want to take your Medicare away. Pretty much almost every Republican in office today complains about Obamacare. Where's their replacement plan? Do the Republicans have a replacement plan? The answer is no. And listen, ladies and gentlemen, this is par for the course. Every single time I talk about these issues and people call me a liar on social media and they say I'm spreading misinformation, I give out the number, but they don't have the gall to call in and have a debate. It happens to me all the time. It's par for the course because I'm happy to have a debate with anybody, even people that call me names, even people that call me a liar. I just want to know what you claim that I'm lying about. What did I say that is misinformation? I don't know, but you're a liar. That's how the MAGA conversation usually goes with people that disagree with me. That's how it usually goes. I'm just sick and tired of it, and I put these videos up all the time. Listen, I gave praise to Ron DeSantis today because I was happy to find out that Ron DeSantis, even though I despise the man, I'll give credit where credit is due. He went down to New York City today. He did the right thing. He shook hands and spoke with the victims' families. I thought that was nice of him to do that. And he did the right thing. And I gave, in the first segment, Joe Biden should have been there. Joe Biden, the president of the United States, should have been in New York City today. And I don't care what was on his agenda. Nothing could have been more important today than him being at the 9/11 site and meeting with the victims' families. Joe Biden should have been there. And I know the vice president was there. My understanding is that she wasn't really mingling or talking with the victim's family. She was kind of hiding behind the stage. And that's wrong. And yes, I do give Ron DeSantis credit for being there today. And more than just being there for a photo op, he was actually talking to the families. And we had someone on first hour that gave me that story, and I believe him. And yes, I will give Ron DeSantis credit for that. If there, and it's wrong. I mean, the president of the United States should have been there. I don't think it's because Joe Biden doesn't care. I think it's because he has people around him that put a priority over what should have been being in New York City. So I don't think it's that Joe Biden doesn't care. He's shown a history of caring. So I certainly disagree with that. Anyway, number to call 702-221-7283. And again, the number if you want to be a part of the program, that's area code 702-221-7283. If you'd like to be a part of this live radio show. We've been talking a lot about 9/11, of course, today being the 22-year anniversary of 9/11, where 22 years ago, at the mastermind of Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda terrorists, changed this country forever. And so many innocent people lost their lives that day. And yes, I do believe that sometimes we take our freedoms for granted in this country. Could there be the freedom for me to go on the air and share my opinions, which I will never take for granted? Getting into your car and going to a restaurant or whatever the case may be. I mean, there are countries in the world still today that if you're gay, you could be murdered. There are countries in the world today where if you cheat on your husband, you're hung. There are countries in the world today where a woman can't even show her face, let alone her body. Thank God in the United States of America, we have it differently, where we have the freedoms to be with who we want to be with, to be able to be opinionated and speak our mind. And yes, even though there are consequences for our words, we have so many freedoms in this country that so many other countries in the world do not have. And that is why there's no other country I'd rather live in. Doesn't mean we don't have a lot of problems here. We do. Doesn't mean that people shouldn't learn history, because they should. But we can't forget what happened 22 years ago. We can't forget the innocent people and the innocent loss of life. We can't forget what it must have been like for so many of those people that had to make a choice that day between burning alive or jumping. We can't forget that. I know I won't. I remember that day as if it was yesterday. And just like the pandemic or anything else, when we have these sorts of things happen, this country was certainly not prepared. I'd like to think that we're certainly more secure in our airports today than we were back then. You wouldn't be able to get on a plane with box cutters today, most likely. It was a bunch of terrorists led by Osama bin Laden and Mohammed Atta that decided that they were willing to kill themselves to kill as many innocent Americans as possible while hurting our economy. And sadly, that day they succeeded, but in the long term, they have not. I wish we could get those innocent people back. How about those brave firefighters and police officers that were climbing up those stairs with their equipment, trying to save lives? They died as heroes. That's what they did. They died as heroes. Yes, there are conspiracy theorists out there, and I put a video up on social media talking a little bit about these conspiracy theorists that'll say that 9/11 was an inside job. The Alex Joneses of the world, as I call them. 9/11 was not an inside job. Now, there were probably people within the government that could have acted upon it and maybe knew that something bad was going to happen, but that doesn't mean that they were a part of it. It doesn't mean that they orchestrated it, because they didn't. Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda orchestrated this. In fact, in Las Vegas, a week before 9/11, there were at least 3 terrorists, including Mohammed Atta, that were staying at a motel on the Strip. We know that as fact. We also know that they went to a strip club, and there were about 40 or 50 miles on their rental car where nobody knows where they went. But we know that for sure, that they spent several days in Vegas and met, and maybe it was just their last hurrah, and they were just trying to have a good time. But they were here. We know that for sure. There's video of those terrorists that were here in Las Vegas a week before 9/11. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we can't take for granted the freedoms that we have in this country. And that's why when we talk about the 2020 election, when we talk about voting, we can never take that for granted. And any attack on our democracy, I will call out on this show, and you should as well. We have the freedom in this country to vote who we think we want representing us. And I'll tell you right now, you're not going to take that right away from me. That ain't going to happen. And we have a right in this country to call out our politicians when they are caught in lies, or they say something that is bigoted. They say something that is not factually accurate. We have a right to do that. We are entitled to our own opinions in this country, but you are not entitled to your own facts. Example, 9/11 was not an inside job. And as much as you'd like to throw out misinformation, COVID was not created by Dr. Fauci. Donald Trump did not win the 2020 election. Those are all bald-faced lies. Could our elections be better and even more secure? Sure. Could Dr. Fauci have done a better job with the information he put out from day one? Sure. Is he perfect? No. But that doesn't mean that the election was stolen, and it doesn't mean that Dr. Fauci somehow orchestrated COVID in a lab. There are ways of having reasonable conversations with people, and then there are certain people that are not capable of having reasonable conversations. Some of those people I'd like to call MAGAs. But hey, I could be wrong. I don't know. All right, here's what we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little Raider football. The Raiders getting a W in Week 1 against the Denver Broncos yesterday. We'll talk to Gully Gulbertson from the Silver and Black Today podcast. He's going to be joining us next, talk a little bit about the big W. And it was big. Listen, you got to get a win in Week 1, so we'll talk a little Raiders. At PTL Radio Show, by the way, on YouTube. If you want to watch the show live on YouTube, we do that every single day. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to Pushing the Limits right here on KSHP.
Hey, everybody. Are you struggling to find a pizza place that reminds you of Brooklyn? That true blue New York style pie? Well, worry no more. Stallone's Italian Eatery Pizza is a knockout. We're located at 467 East Silverado Ranch Boulevard, just off of Ringwood Road, half a mile east of South Point Casino, just minutes from the Las Vegas Strip. Come by and grab a slice of pie. Plus, check out our Brooklyn-inspired Italian cuisine. Our sandwiches are super. Hero, that is. Because why be a sub when you can be a hero? Stallone's Italian Eatery is here to serve you phenomenal food, Vegas. Forget about it.
Everybody, it's Brian Shapiro from Pushing the Limits here. I want to tell you guys about my good friends at the Postal Annex. They have a notary signing agent on site daily, no appointment needed, and they offer a full scale of printing services from shipping labels to documents, business cards, banners, photos, and business signage. They're your passport service headquarters. They offer passport photos, and they can renew your adult passports. If you're traveling in a hurry, they can get those passports to you within 7 days or less. Mailbox rentals with a physical street address, and they also receive your packages from Amazon, UPS, FedEx, USPS, and more. Here's the best part. If you're a Pushing the Limits listener, they have an introductory rate of only $39 for a 3-month service. You can't beat it. Give them a call, 702-873-8005. Check them out at 6130 West Flamingo Road. It's the Postal Annex. Tell them I sent you.
Buying or selling a home is a huge life event that requires guidance from an expert in the industry and community. My name is Blake Wynn. You may recognize my name as my grandfather was the best governor the state of Nevada has ever had. Growing up in Las Vegas, I've come to know this community intricately. Now, I am raising a family here as well, so I understand all the issues impacting our home and quality of life. As the top realtor for the #1 real estate team at Keller Williams, you can have confidence in my experience, knowledge, and track record. When it comes to buying, selling, or investing in real estate, choose a name you can trust and someone who understands the community you call home. Call Blake Wynn today and experience the difference of a trusted expert. 702-540-3311.
Hey everybody, it's Brian Shapiro from Pushing the Limits. I want to tell you guys about Sahara West Urgent Care and Wellness. They're conveniently located on the southwest corner of Sahara and Jones. They're open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. At Sahara West Urgent Care, they'll take care of all your healthcare needs. They offer routine services such as physicals, STD testing, car accident treatment, and work injuries. You name it, they do it. They have on-site x-ray, EKG, ultrasound, and labs. They treat chronic conditions such as asthma, blood pressure, diabetes, and more. They also offer general wellness exams and treatments such as testosterone enhancement and cancer screening. They're located on Sahara, 6125 West Sahara Avenue. Their number is 702-248-0554. And the best part, they accept most major insurances and affordable cash pay prices, office visits starting at just $95. And I'm also a client, so please give them a call, 702-248-0554. All right, welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits on a Monday. Thank you so much for joining us. Boy, what a fun sports weekend we had. In Aces get the W, Raiders get the W on the road against the Denver Broncos. God, a lot of stuff to talk about. And Coco Gauff and the Joker, which we'll get to that here in a few. I do want to talk a little tennis a little bit later on in the show, but I have to bring my friend on now, who I don't think there's anybody better that covers the Raiders than Mr. Gully Gulbranson, joining us from the original founder of the Silver and Black today. And it's nice that we get to talk to you, Scott, day after a W. How about that? The Raiders getting a win in week 1.
How about that? And remember us, it's too bad Chris isn't there so we could rub in the fact that didn't you and I choose the Broncos, or was it the other way around? I can't remember. But anyway, I said the Raiders would cover. And they not only covered, but they won outright. So all you money line bettors had a good time. But yeah, good way to start. I mean, remember they started last year 0-3 before going 6-11. There's still a long road to go, but this game showed a lot of mental toughness by this team, Brian.
And I agree. For the record, Chris bet on the Denver Broncos. So you and I were right, because I agree.
That's right.
I actually thought the Raiders would get it done. Chris isn't here today because he's in a really bad mood. He had a really bad Sunday sports betting wise. But anyway, so Scott, tell me if you agree with me, Nutter, here. I don't think we learned a lot about the Raiders yesterday. Here's why. Now, listen, I thought Garoppolo had a really good sound football game, and I thought a poignant moment in the game, and maybe the biggest moment in the game, which you got a 3rd and 7. And when push came to shove, he's the one who got a first down and sealed the deal for them. I thought that was really poignant just on his career. He just seems to get it done. He had a really good game. The defense played very well, but there's a but here. You won by a point. Listen, you win a game on the road in the NFL. It doesn't matter who you play against. It's a good win. Nice start to the season. But the Denver Broncos are horrible. Russell Wilson looked terrible. Part of that, give credit to the Raiders, yes, but the Denver Broncos are a really bad football team. So I look at it like this. Good job, Raiders. You got the job done. You got the W. That's what's most important. But I think we're going to learn a lot more about this team in week 2 when they're on the road against Buffalo, a Super Bowl contender. If they can hang with Buffalo, but we'll get to that later. But my point is, if they can just hang with Buffalo, then I'm going to be really impressed. I didn't learn a lot about this team in week 1. Am I wrong in having that opinion?
No, I think you are accurate when it comes to the play of this team, especially on defense, right? So for a tale of two halves, really, because the first half on defense, the Raiders were letting Russell Wilson leak out of the pocket and burn them. And that included Jacorian Bennett, the rookie cornerback, who I think is very, very talented, and recovered and had a better second half. So I think they were confused. But remember, they've had so much, and I'm not making excuses because I think you're right. I think we'll learn a lot more about them after Buffalo. But you look at what they were doing, they've turned over that defensive roster has been completely turned over for the most part. So you see that usually when that happens, Brian, you see a team at first a little bit discombobulated until they can kind of put things together. So luckily they played Denver, right? If they had played the 49ers yesterday, it might be a different story we're talking about right now, right? Because they would have punished you for it. So I think that, but I think more than anything, and here's the question I'll pose to you, Brian. If this was last year, do they win that game? And my answer would be no. So I think from a mental toughness perspective, yes. We don't know where this team's at from a football perspective. You're right. But from a mental toughness perspective, a team that's rebuilding, that was a big win. And I think they showed us a lot in that area.
Scott, that's a really good question. And I tend to agree with you. I think the Raiders would have found a way to blow that game yesterday if it was last year's team. I think that's a very valid point. And listen, I think you got to give Garoppolo credit. I mean, listen, first week, new team. I thought he played pretty good sound football, something that Derek Carr did quite a bit. And congratulations to Carr. He got a W yesterday. We're happy for him. He's a good dude. But Carr turned the ball over quite a bit. And Garoppolo didn't do that yesterday. He was pretty good with the football. He made smart decisions. Again, I know it's only one play. But seeing a guy like Garoppolo, who's not known for running the football and scrambling, get that first down to seal the game with a couple minutes to go, I said to myself, he's one of those guys that, even though it's not his specialty, he just seems in his career when he's healthy to find a way to get that first down. Could be a difficult pass. It could be running for a first down yesterday. And that's what I admire about Garoppolo. He always seems to get it done.
Well, and to your point, I mean, I've covered the Raiders for 7 seasons. And one of the things that I saw was a lot of getting a lead and then giving the ball back too soon, right? And then giving the other team the other opportunity to come down, score, and win the game. And it's happened over and over again. And I think that's what you hit on with Garoppolo. And for people who want to get angry at me and call me a Carr hater for saying it, I really don't care. But you see the difference in the quarterbacks. And again, Derek Carr is a good quarterback, but there's a difference there in how they handle the pressure and how they handle the situation. I also made the point on our show, Brian, that I think Jimmy Garoppolo, being a bridge quarterback, because that's what he is, okay? He's a bridge quarterback, a very good one, but a bridge quarterback nonetheless. He's the right person at the right time in the right system. He knows how to run that system. You saw it yesterday. You saw the fact that he was comfortable, calm, collected. Not only that, but when he had to get out of the pocket, he's not a runner, just like Derek Carr wasn't either. He's not a runner, but he makes plays happen. And that's the thing with Jimmy Garoppolo. He wins. He just wins. Now, yes, he had a great defense in San Francisco. He had a much better team in San Francisco. You got to give credit to some of that. But as you saw yesterday, when the rubber hits the road, the guy's pretty cool and collected, and he doesn't panic. He doesn't have happy feet. And so I think that's going to bode well for the Raiders down the line here this season.
Let's talk about down the line. I think we agree. They got the win. You go into anywhere on the road in the NFL, it's hard to win NFL games, and they were able to do that. So, you got the job done. Totally different team you're now playing in week 2. And I think a lot of people would consider Buffalo a Super Bowl contender. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of on the fence on that. Love the team that they have, like the coach. Love the QB, of course. But this is a different team now, and I don't expect the Raiders to win this football game. However, I will say this. And I know Josh McDaniels would disagree where you go to win, and I understand any coach would say that. If they're competitive against Buffalo, and I'm talking about maybe 1-score game in the fourth quarter, if they're competitive, then I'm going to say to myself, okay, this team is really much improved. But if you get blown out, then I'm saying to myself, okay, well, we didn't learn a lot about the Raiders. I think we could learn a lot about this team in week 2 if they could actually go into a hostile environment against a really good Buffalo team and make this game competitive. So my question to you is, do you think they can do that?
I think they can. A couple things that are working in their favor. One is Buffalo's playing tonight against the Jets, right? So we'll kind of see where Buffalo's at. We kind of know where they're at. I mean, based on what they did last year, clearly a very, very good football team, but they're going to face that Jets team who has a very, very good defense themselves, and we'll see where they are. So maybe they'll beat up on each other. It gives the Raiders an opportunity. They get to go back to Buffalo when it's still warm. Okay, that's another key there. So I think so. They cannot play defense like they did in Denver and stay in the ball game. And so what I mean by that is, especially up front, they've got to put pressure in the middle on the quarterback. Okay, they've got to do that. They got to do better on the ends. Max Crosby had a normal Max Crosby game. Malcolm Kuntz had a couple nice moments. Tyree Wilson's not in shape yet. He was very slow most of the time. Showed a couple little flashes here and there. So they're going to have to contain Josh Allen. He's a lot more difficult to contain than a kind of over the hill Russell Wilson. So that's going to be the key to the game. And I think we'll learn a lot about where they're at. And oh, by the way, you're going to face a team just as good in the Kansas City Chiefs. I know they lost on Monday. Everybody wants to write them off already, but no, when you have Mahomes there, Patrick Mahomes, it's always going to be a close game. So we'll see where they're at. And I think you're right. We'll see that. And then can the offense get going a little more? Can they get that run game? They pass blocked really well, did not give up a sack to a very good Denver front, by the way. But what they didn't do was run block very well. So we'll have to see what they're able to do against Buffalo, who has a pretty good defense as well.
And by the way, for the people out there that are counting out the Kansas City Chiefs, there was a guy that wasn't playing. His name is Travis Kelce, arguably the best player in the history of the game to play that position. So for people who make statements like that, I just think it's absurd. Do I think the Chiefs are as good this year as they were last year? Probably not. But when you got Travis Kelce healthy and Pat Mahomes healthy, I give them as good a chance of anybody as getting back to the Super Bowl. Yeah, no question about that. What would you rate, I guess, the play calling, the coaching yesterday on a scale 1 to 10? I mean, I just want to get your thoughts on that because I am highly critical of Josh McDaniels, and I didn't think that Davante Adams, they targeted him enough and threw the ball to him enough. What did you think of the play calling and the coaching yesterday?
Well, I thought it was pretty good, Brian. So I've been very critical too. So I've been there with you.
Yep.
But I think yesterday, if you look at it, I think the only thing that I would have done a little earlier, you talked about Davante Adams, who was second on the team in targets and receptions, right behind Jacoby Myers, who had the great game before getting concussed by a dirty hit, in my view. But nonetheless, you look at that, and what they needed to do was on the interception from Jimmy Garoppolo in the end zone, when he threw the interception, his only turnover, they lined up Davante Adams in the slot because it took him away from Patrick Surtain, who's not going to come on the inside to cover a receiver. So it put him in a one-on-one situation that he's always going to win. And he did. He was wide open in the end zone, and Garoppolo just looked to the wrong side. And so I think there is an opportunity where understanding the personnel and the lineups and who's going against who, the matchups, is maybe could have done that. But overall, I think he did a pretty good job. To put Davante Adams in that position in the red zone shows a good call. I think overall it was better. They could not run the ball as effectively. So at first I was a little critical saying, well, why isn't he running the ball? You have Josh Jacobs there. I know he hasn't had camp, but you got to get him going. And then I started watching in the interior, and they just were not getting the push on the run that they needed to. So I think the jury's still out on McDaniels through one game. We'll have to see. This is going to be a much more difficult game to plan for. So I think we'll get a better sense for Buffalo. But I didn't think it was too bad in Denver.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Any concern that Josh Jacobs really didn't have a really good game yesterday? And we know how badly they need him on offense running the ball. Any concern there?
Not yet. I think he's got a little rust. I don't care. He's in great shape, but it's not getting hit in the face by another guy kind of shape. And that's what you need for football, getting tackled and all the jazz. If you look at what he did yesterday, again, the offensive line, for as well as they did in pass blocking, they were moving in Thayer Munford as a jumbo tight end to block. Okay, because they were not getting the push they needed. I don't know what was going on. It was partly Denver. You got to give them credit for that. Josh Jacobs had a huge block on that big third down you talked about earlier to seal the game when Jimmy Garoppolo left the pocket and got the first down. So he did other things too when you watch the film. I'm not worried about Josh Jacobs. When he did run, he had some nice runs after contact and broke some tackles. So I think you'll see him. I think by week 3, he's going to be his normal self. And I think he'll get unhinged and a little more going up in Buffalo this coming weekend.
I'll be honest with you, Scott. I haven't looked at the point spreads. It's been such a busy weekend of sports. I would imagine Buffalo's probably favored by more than a touchdown. What is it, around 9? Or that's what I would guess. Do you know what it's at?
I saw it as low as 7.5, but I also saw an 8.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm close. So give me your thoughts. I know it's early and it's hard to make predictions on a Monday for the next weekend. I think that the Raiders are in trouble. I think they lose by double digits. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard to pick the Raiders going to that game on the road, despite what happened in Denver. And we saw enough in Denver to know that they are a work in progress on all sides, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And what they're going to do to answer. I mean, I saw some disturbing play from the safeties from the Raiders. Trayvon Moehrig is just got to do better. And I worry that Josh Allen's going to be able to pick them apart with that receiving core and with the ability that the Bills have. And then defensively, you worry about the run, as you just talked about with Josh Jacobs. They have to get the ball going. So I think an over a touchdown spread and even getting up to 2-score spread, a touchdown and a field goal is realistic. Now the Raiders can go in, and I'm not saying they don't have a chance, but from a betting perspective, 8.5 to me seems fair. It really does, based on where these two teams are in their development.
minimum, Garoppolo has to throw 3 touchdowns, in my personal opinion, or at least they have to score at least 3 or 4 touchdowns. Garoppolo doesn't have to throw for the touchdowns, but you got to find a way to put the ball in the end zone. I'd say 4 times if they're going to win this football game or be competitive. And to me, I think Josh Jacobs is the key. You have to get the ground game going, and if Jacobs can run the ball with some level of, I guess the word I would use is by his standards, what he's capable of doing, and we didn't see that yesterday, then I think the Raiders have a chance to stay in this game. But I would not take the Raiders gambling wise plus 7.5 or even plus 8. If they can keep this game within a touchdown or 1 score, I would be very impressed, and I would go out of this game saying, hey, you know what? Good job to be competitive and give yourself a chance. I think that's all from a Raiders fan should ask for. Give yourself a chance in the fourth quarter, right? And I guess we'll see what happens.
Yep. Keep it close and hope you get a couple breaks. No question.
No doubt. Scott, you're the best, my friend. Always appreciate you coming on every Monday and giving us your perspective. We'll see what happens next week and look forward to catching up with you next week, my friend. Go Raiders. And appreciate the time as always. And hopefully we'll get Chris Wynn in here next week to give us some more bad picks.
All right, Brian, give him my best and have a great week, my friend. Take care.
Appreciate it, Scott. Thank you so much. That's goalie Scott Gulbranson. Love having him on, the original founder of the Silver and Black Today podcast. I don't think better in the business really at covering the Las Vegas Raiders than him. And hey, listen, they got the W. What's the most important thing about playing a game on the road in the NFL? Get the win. Doesn't matter whether it's the Denver Broncos, whoever it is. And they were able to do that. And by the way, they weren't favored either. They were getting 3.5 points. They were actually a dog. I think the Raiders are a better team than the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos are terrible. Russell Wilson is a joke. He's just a weird guy too, man. And it goes to show you what a good coach Pete Carroll is. I don't know how he dealt with this guy. The Denver Broncos are really, really bad. You know who else is really, really bad? The Pittsburgh Steelers. How long are they going to keep their coach? I know the guys won at Super Bowl, but I mean, come on. Pittsburgh was awful yesterday. I mean, really bad. How bad were the Giants last night? Okay, I'll be honest with you. I put a few shekels on the Giants. Boy, was I wrong about that game last night. I thought in rainy conditions, with the coach of the year and a rising team, that game would be very competitive against the Cowboys yesterday. And Prescott really didn't have to do anything because that's how bad the Giants were. Turning the ball over, blocked kicks. Your starting quarterback was awful. Your front line was terrible. The Giants, to me, were the biggest disappointment yesterday. I mean, when you lose 40-0, they have to be, right? The Ravens looked good yesterday. A couple other games that I was watching, the Ravens looked pretty good. They took care of business at home. And there were a lot of entertaining games. The Chargers game was really entertaining. That was a really good football game till the end. There were a lot of really good games. Unfortunately, the Sunday night game was not very entertaining. I have a feeling the game tonight's going to be very entertaining. You got arguably the 2 best QBs in the game, or, obviously Mahomes is in that mix as well, and there's a few others, but this is going to be really weird watching Aaron Rodgers in a Jets jersey. This is going to be very entertaining. I expect it to be high scoring. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Another thing that we didn't even talk about, because it was such an incredible sports weekend, was the U.S. Open. And, I'm a little biased when it comes to the U.S. Open because, a lot of people would say Wimbledon, as far as the majors, Wimbledon is probably the most prestigious, and they're probably right. But I think the U.S. Open is right there. Then you have the Australian Open. The French Open might be ahead of the Australian Open, but I think the U.S. Open is right there as one of the most, if not the most prestigious title in all of tennis. And I told everybody a month ago that I thought it was going to be Coco Gauff and it was going to be Novak Djokovic. I'm on the record as saying that, so I was right there. I was right about something. But Coco Gauff is 19 years old. Let me repeat that again. She was already the youngest person to make a U.S. Open final. She's now the youngest to ever win it. 19 years old. Now, I don't think Coco Gauff is going to be the next Serena Williams. Serena Williams is the best female tennis player of all time. However, right now, Coco Gauff is the face of the sport. And, a lot of people were saying that about Osaka. And I think Coco Gauff is the opposite of Osaka. Osaka, by the way, is going to be returning to tennis, playing in the Australian Open. Coco Gauff loves the pressure. Coco Gauff doesn't mind speaking to the media. Coco Gauff has the experience under her belt. She's level-headed. She's calm. She was down 1-0 at a U.S. Open final, and she found a way to come back against the number one female tennis player in the world, who hits the ball so hard, it's mesmerizing. There's also a reason why women's tennis is now getting paid equal pay to men, at least at the U.S. Open. It's because the product's really good. Now, Coco Gauff wouldn't beat any of the top 400 men's players in the world, so we're not talking about who's better. We're talking about the product. The reason why the women's tennis product is so good is because they don't serve the ball 140 miles an hour like the men, so the points are longer. I think most tennis fans would tell you the longer the rally, the more entertaining the match is. Right? It's fun to watch a guy serve 140 miles an hour, but after a while, it gets a little boring and the rallies aren't great. The finals was very entertaining. The women's tennis product has always been a really good product. And I'm glad to see that the women are getting paid what they deserve in tennis, because I've always said that the women's product in tennis is fantastic. In some cases, maybe even better than the men. In some cases. Coco Gauff is now the face of the sport. Make no mistake about it. Very emotional when she hugged her family, and she said to her she'd never seen her dad cry before until a few days ago. I thought that was really cool. A lot of celebrities, man. A lot of NBA players. Jimmy Butler was there. Kevin Durant was there. Spike Lee. Pretty much every big-name celebrity that spends time in New York was there to watch that match. And Coco Gauff, she just seems like an incredible person. Just really level-headed, smart. Again, I didn't even know how to tie my shoes at 19 years old. And the way she speaks, how eloquent she speaks, and her maturity, she's got all the qualities of a superstar. Again, I don't think she's going to be Serena Williams. I don't think she's going to win 30 majors. But this isn't the first major she's going to win. I'll tell you that. She is the face of the sport. She's going to win many more tournaments, and she's going to be a crowd favorite. She's a easy person to root for. Now, on the other side of things, everybody wanted to see Alcaraz play the Joker in the finals. Didn't happen. Medvedev kind of stole that thunder. I think we forget what Novak Djokovic has done. Listen, I don't like Novak Djokovic personally. Why? Anybody that tests positive for COVID, doesn't tell people, and then shows up to a photo shoot while you can infect other people without wearing a mask, it's a really bad and selfish thing to do, and Novak did that. I think that spoke volumes about his character. So I don't root for the Joker, but nobody can deny the fact that he's probably the best male tennis player of all time. What Djokovic has accomplished, and if memory serves me right, he's 36 years old. You are not in your prime at 36 years old. Certainly not tennis. I would say by the time you pass 31, 32, you're not in your prime when it comes to tennis. The physical conditioning that this guy is in and maintains is mesmerizing to me. And that was a very physical match yesterday against Medvedev, who's a really, really good player. Now, I thought Medvedev would win at least one set, and I was wrong. He was close to. Tiebreaker in the second set. But what the Joker continues to do in the sport of tennis is unmatched. And I know we can go back to, so many great legends in the sport. Jimmy Connors, Bjorn Borg, John McEnroe, Pete Sampras, Andre Agassi. We can go back in the sport for decades and decades. Rod Laver. Stan Smith. There's so many great players in the sport that we can go back to. And I'm probably missing a few. And they're all legends. Novak Djokovic is the best tennis player of all time. All due respect to Rafael Nadal, all due respect to Roger Federer, Novak has surpassed them. He is the best tennis player of all time. Regardless of what your feelings are of him, what he has accomplished in this sport is unprecedented. It is unmatched. And at least right now, I don't see anybody that is going to surpass him. Not even close. Alcaraz maybe has a chance, but boy, I don't know. That was a disappointing loss he had in the semifinals. Alcaraz is very young. And he did defeat Joker in the last major. But, man, what a fun sports week. And, of course, the Aces got the W, and they are officially the number one seed. I believe they play the Sky, if I'm not mistaken, on Wednesday at home in Game 1. Is anybody really going to be paying a lot of attention to that until the WNBA Finals? Can we just mark it down right now? It's going to be the New York Liberty and the Aces in the WNBA. Is it going to be any other way? If it is, that's going to be a huge letdown. I know the Liberty lost yesterday, but come on. It's going to be the Liberty and it's going to be the Aces in the WNBA Finals. And I think if that is the case, the Aces are going to have their hands full. But boy, what a great sports weekend, man. All right, it's my dad's 75th birthday today, so I got to take him out to dinner. Maybe I'll take him to Sapphire. I don't know. Also, good news, we are going to be collaborating with Sapphire for Monday Night Football parties. So stay tuned for that. We're working that out. And we will be making appearances for Monday Night Football at Sapphire. I don't know where I'm going to watch the game today, though. I don't know. Maybe I'll just take a break from football and just take my dad out to a nice birthday dinner. You know? Maybe I'll do that. I don't know. Can Brian do that? Can I just be calm and go out with my dad to dinner and not go to some party or hang out with some, D-list celebrity? I'll ask William Hung what he's doing tonight. We'll see what he's up to. Sorry, William. That was a cheap shot. I love William Hung. He's awesome. He's awesome. Anderson Hunt getting his jersey retired. Hunt's going to be joining us on the show this week as well. So congratulations to him. Finally, he's going to be getting his jersey retired. I don't know what took so damn long, but I'm not surprised. Eric Harper's a good athletic director at UNLV. And I didn't really bring up the Michigan-UNLV football game. There's a reason for that because there's really nothing to talk about. They play Vandy at home this weekend, by the way, so that should be fun. Thanks for joining us, everybody. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. Have a great day.